You know the moment. Work's done. The house is quiet. You sit down, and within 30 seconds, you're reaching for your phone. No reason. Nothing's coming in. You just can't sit there. That restlessness isn't random, and it's not because you're busy. You're not reaching for the phone because you need information. You're reaching for it because the silence started asking you a question, and you don't want to hear it. Think about the last time you were genuinely alone. No screen, no podcast playing in the background. How long did that last? 5 minutes? 2? Most men can't get past 60 seconds before something has to be on. And the strange part is, you'd probably describe yourself as someone who values solitude. You'd say you need time to decompress, but what you actually do is fill every gap. The commute has a podcast, the gym has a playlist, the shower has a thought spiral. You're never alone, you've just changed the noise. There's a reason for that, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A French mathematician sat down in 1662 and wrote one of the most uncomfortable sentences in Western philosophy. He wasn't writing about war, or death, or God. He wrote, "I have often said that the sole cause of man's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his room. A man who has enough to live on, if he knew how to stay at home with pleasure, would not leave it to go to sea or besiege a town. Read that slowly." He wrote this in 1662. He's describing you in 2024. Blaise Pascal had watched courtiers scramble for status. Politicians drag countries into war. Men destroy marriages and careers chasing stimulation they didn't need. And his diagnosis was the same in every case. They couldn't tolerate their own company. They couldn't be still. He wasn't talking about introversion. He wasn't recommending meditation retreats. He was pointing at something specific, the terror most men feel when they're left alone with themselves and have nothing to perform, nothing to chase, no one to impress. You know this feeling. It's the pull toward the fridge, the TV, the group chat, anywhere but the empty chair. Pascal called it divertissement, diversion. The endless machinery we build to avoid the one thing that might actually help us, confronting who we are when nobody's watching. He wrote this in a notebook he never planned to publish. It wasn't advice, it was a diagnosis. Here's what happens when you actually sit still. The first thing that arrives is boredom. That's manageable. You've handled boredom before. But boredom passes in about 90 seconds, and what follows it is different. What follows it is a question. It's specific to you. Maybe it's, is this the life you meant to build? Maybe it's, are you actually okay with where things are headed? Maybe it's the face of someone you've been avoiding thinking about. The phone interrupts that. The podcast interrupts it. You tell yourself you're relaxing, but what you're actually doing is managing. You've built an environment so dense with input that the question can never get a word in. This isn't weakness. It's almost rational. Those questions aren't comfortable. They have real answers that might demand real changes. But here's what you're trading away. Every time you avoid that silence, you're also skipping the information you need most. You can't course correct on a life you won't look at directly. The man who can sit in a room alone and bear what comes up, that man is operating on better information than everyone else. Around 62 AD, Seneca wrote a letter to his friend Lucilius from voluntary exile. He'd stepped back from the most powerful court in the world, Nero's Rome, where one wrong word meant death, and retreated to a simple house. Not to rest. To think. In letter 7, he wrote something that reads like it was aimed at this century. Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn while they teach. That last line is easy to miss. He's not prescribing isolation. He's prescribing selectivity, knowing the difference between company that sharpens you and noise that dulls you. Seneca was a man of enormous public power, real wealth, real enemies, real danger. He wasn't prescribing solitude because it was peaceful. He was prescribing it because it was the only thing that made everything else legible. The man who can't be alone is always at the mercy of whoever's in the room. He takes on other people's anxiety like a sponge. He adjusts his opinions to match the last conversation. He's governed by input he didn't choose. Seneca's withdrawal wasn't retreat. It was how he stayed himself. Pascal saw it, and the Buddhists had a word for it 1,000 years earlier, samsara, the wheel, the endless cycling between desire and distraction and back again. You want something, you get it, it doesn't satisfy, you want the next thing. The phone fits perfectly into that cycle. It never fully satisfies, and it never fully bores you either. It's engineered for exactly that. But zoom out, and it's the same pattern across the whole life. The promotion that was supposed to settle something didn't. The car, the apartment, the number in the account, each one closes a gap for about 2 weeks, then the gap reopens. Pascal's diagnosis applies to the whole thing. The man who can't sit alone is the man who believes the next thing will finally be the one that makes him okay. It never is, because the thing he's avoiding, the silence, the question, it's still there. The Stoics had a specific term for chasing external things as the source of your security. They called it external goods. Epictetus put it plainly. He said, "The only things in your control are your judgments, your desires, your impulses. Everything else, reputation, money, what other people think of you, that's not yours, and building your sense of self on things that aren't yours is a particular kind of poverty." You felt this. You post something, a win, a thought, a result you worked for. And before you even feel proud of it yourself, you're watching for the response. If it doesn't come, there's a small deflation. If it does, there's a small high, followed almost immediately by the need to do it again. That's not connection, that's a feedback loop. And the men caught hardest in it are often the ones who'd reject that description loudest. They'd say they're just sharing their life, just staying in touch. But take the audience away and ask, would you have done it? Would the same workout, the same thought, the same view mean the same thing with no one watching? For most people, the honest answer is different from the public answer. Pascal's room, that quiet room, is where you find out who you are when there's no performance. Most men never go there. And without that information, every decision they make about what they want, what they value, who they're trying to become, it's all filtered through what will look good. That's not a life. That's a long audition with no intermission. This isn't an argument for sitting cross-legged in a field meditating. It's more direct than that. Start with 20 minutes. Phone in a different room. No music, no podcast. Sit with whatever comes. The first 5 minutes feel like nothing, just mild restlessness. By minute 10, something shifts. The brain stops waiting for input and starts producing its own. That's where the real thinking happens. The things you've been processing beneath the surface, the relationship, the career direction, the decision you've been postponing, they surface. Not in a dramatic way, more like, there they are. Seneca did this before writing. Marcus Aurelius did it before governing a crumbling empire. Neither of them were doing it for their well-being. They were doing it because clarity is a competitive advantage. The man who knows what he actually wants, not what he's been told to want, not what he performs wanting, moves differently. He's less reactive. He's harder to manipulate. He doesn't need someone to tell him how he's doing because he already knows. That's what Pascal's room produces. Not peace, precision. There's a specific kind of freedom that comes from mastering this, and it's not the freedom you'd expect. It's not that the noise disappears, the notifications still come. The opinions of other people still exist. The status games are still running. What changes is that none of it gets inside you the same way. You've already done the check-in. You've already sat with the real questions. So when the external world tries to tell you how you're doing, through likes, through comparisons, through the subtle pressure of what everyone else seems to be achieving, you have a reference point. You've already talked to yourself. You already know. Pascal wrote his diagnosis while Europe was tearing itself apart with religious wars, political scheming, and the kind of collective agitation that looks, from the outside, exactly like a population that can't sit quietly in a room. Sound familiar? The men who built something lasting in that world, Seneca included, weren't the ones running fastest. They were the ones who could stop, who could go inside, who could bear the silence long enough to hear what it was saying. That capacity is available to you tonight, not next month, not after the next thing resolves. Just a chair and 20 minutes and the willingness to find out what you actually think.
If something in this hit differently, subscribe. There's more like this coming. Each video goes deeper into ideas that actually change how you operate.